Well, good morning and good afternoon for some of you. Thanks for joining Beyond Compliance for August 2020. We're talking about root cause analysis today, looking at some methods, some tools, definitely some good tips from the front line on root cause analysis. We're happy that you can join us. My name is Aaron Bolshaw. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for SafetyChain and today's moderator. A little bit about Beyond Compliance. So it's an ongoing monthly industry update for food and beverage facility operators, QA, safety, compliance professionals. And what we do here is we partner with thought leaders across different sectors, from labs to equipment manufacturers to consultants and many more, with one goal. It's to bring you insights around the market that shape the way we grow our businesses, deliver quality products to our customers, and safeguard our brand. So a little bit about SafetyChain for anyone that isn't aware. We are the #1 plant management platform that improves yield, maximizes productivity, and ensures compliance for food and beverage manufacturers. We're trusted by over 1,500 facilities and growing fast. And we are really the only complete solution for production. Think about OEE and SPC, right? Food safety and quality, the QMS side of the house, and then also supplier compliance. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I just wanted to make sure everyone understands we can't hear you, but we want to hear from you. So if you have questions, we definitely want to hear those. Use the console to the right, the webinar console, to ask us some questions. We'll save some time at the end of the webinar to go through those. So anyone, if you're having any audio issues, please, which means you can't hear me say this, but try calling in if you are experiencing any difficulties. Calling using a phone, that usually resolves it. And of course, everyone's favorite question, yes, you will get a link to this recording and the slides to share and distribute to your teams. And we're not going to have a quiz today. We do have a poll, but we don't have a quiz. So with that, I just want to introduce our panelists today. It's my pleasure to welcome Shamanique Schrick to Beyond Compliance. Shamanique is a solutions architect here at SafetyChain, but she has lived the life, right? So she got over 10 years experience as an auditor, food safety expert, quality specialist, with degrees in biochemistry and molecular biology. She is way smarter than me as a scientist, but she's also done quality audit, supplier quality auditor for Treehouse. She's worked at Cargill, CSM Bakery, and Miller Coors. I think that's where you started, Shamanique, as a microbiologist. So you've been there, done that. You've got the T-shirt, right?
Yep, I have a bunch of T-shirts actually.
Good. Well, welcome. I appreciate you taking time today and to go through root cause analysis, which on the surface, I'll be honest, it sounded really dry to me, right? I was like, really, root cause analysis? And then we started to get into this, right? And we started to put the presentation together, and it actually turns out I'm quite interested in this. You had a chance to share it with a colleague, this presentation before we started today, a colleague at Cargill. What was their impression? What did you get from your colleague as far as impression?
Yeah, she was actually the one who kind of helped me to learn more about root cause analysis. She led the root cause analysis at our facility, and getting her feedback on the presentation and our solution, she was pleasantly surprised to see how we can make the process easier, because as in her career, when she was facilitating these, it was just a lot of different systems that were being used, and there was no real easy way to get this done. So overall, I think she was really pleased at what she saw.
Oh, good. Well, so let's get into it. If you want, we're talking through some tools, some processes and methods. You've got some good advice, sort of, quote unquote, from the front lines, and maybe even a story or two for us. Why don't you take over and walk us through just high level? Let's start, for anyone that isn't too familiar with it, where we are as far as what root cause analysis is.
Yeah. So, sorry.
You're good.
Basically, the FDA recently released their new era for smarter food safety blueprint, maybe a month or two ago. It was supposed to be released earlier this year, but due to COVID, it was delayed. But in the blueprint, the FDA really emphasizes this new approach to food safety by leveraging technology and other tools. In the blueprint, they state that they want smarter food safety to be more than just technology, but also about simpler, more effective, and modern approaches and processes. And specifically in their core element two, smarter tools and approaches for prevention and outbreak response, they specifically call out enhancing and strengthening root cause analysis and predictive analytics. So under section 2.1 is where software like SafetyChain can help the food industry to invigorate the root cause analysis, specifically around these 3 points here, with rapid deployment, standardizing the criterion format for producing reports on root cause analysis, and enhancing communication tools, both internally and externally. Although the FDA hasn't given exact guidance for what those standardized reports will look like, SafetyChain can help you to create a format, and if necessary, we can help change them very quickly and easily.
Yeah, it's funny. The FDA is, we partner with them. We believe strongly in their guidance and everything, but they have this knack for making things a little bit ambiguous. What does invigorate mean? So it's up to us, right, Shamini, to figure that out. So
it's up to us to kind of figure it out and to try to kind of come up with our own standards to show them that we know what we're doing and that we're experts in our processes, because they can't be the expert in everything. But to start out, what is root cause analysis? And the easiest way to think of it is a method of identifying the cause of a problem, solving it, and preventing it. That problem could be an outbreak, an event that could have caused a microbiological, chemical, or physical contamination, a processing failure, or food safety system failure. And the goal of the investigation is to determine the underlying factors or factors, and ultimately reduce the risk of a foodborne illness. Outbreaks and product recalls can cost companies millions of dollars and damage brand reputations. And so you want to make sure that not only if you're doing these root cause analysis, that they are really truly going to be used to prevent any further occurrences of an incident.
Yeah, is this normally a part of a larger CAPA program, Shamini? Is that sort of where this is nestled most likely when you're looking at, hey, who's doing what in a facility? Is this or is it completely different?
No, it is nestled in those things, and a lot of times people's CAPA programs really are honestly just corrections because you have recurring issues, and the preventive action portion is where a lot of people struggle when it comes to their CAPA process. And I think part of that is due to not actually finding root cause and only addressing contributing factors. So I think it's important that you know the difference between a contributing factor and a root cause, because that's going to be critical to ensuring that the investigation that you perform is adequately thorough to actually identify those root causes. So thinking in simple terms, a contributing factor is what went wrong, whereas a root cause is why it went wrong. And so when people control those contributing factors without addressing the underlying reason why it was present in the first place, it can lead to that repetitive cycle of short-term corrections, which is usually followed by a gradual loss of food safety controls and recurring problems. And distinguishing between the root cause and contributing factors encourages and supports prevention of the problem rather than just mitigation of the effects of an incident.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So benefits of using root cause analysis. This slide here, basically, if you're identifying inefficiencies and vulnerabilities in your systems and processes, then you will be able to make those systems and processes more robust and infallible. And that puts less emphasis on personnel, which is oftentimes variable and temporary in a lot of facilities. So when you adopt this systems-based approach, you can actively consider and anticipate risk, and that will also help to foster a food safety culture that prevents contamination rather than respond to it after it occurs. So this is tying back to that prevention portion that the FDA is really trying to drive home. And if you're preventing those incidents, it's going to have a direct economic impact by preventing financial losses and damaging your brand.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's not funny. It's just it's interesting, right? The FDA is really coming out now when they did this walkout of the new era, the guidelines and the 4 core elements. They're saying that there is a special section for technology. They understand that with technology, that's usually what unlocks data, and that's what's really going to be a longer term, I think, solution for a lot of the woes that the FDA had. So I think it's really nice that they're really just saying, hey, we've got to get technology, we've got to shine a light on it, and let's make sure that it's a part of one of these, the new era of food safety. It is one of the core elements. So it's called ICT is the acronym, because we all needed another acronym in our worlds, right, Shamini?
Right. One more thing to keep track of. So there's really no single prescribed method of conducting root cause analysis. There's many tools and methods that have been developed, and usually the choice of root cause methodology can be a matter of personal choice, company policy, or dependent on the type of issue or nonconformity that's being investigated. Some companies find different tools work better for different types of situation, and that can be due to the size or complexity of the incident. Some of the common tools would be your 5 whys, fishbone, Pareto charts, scatter plot diagrams, failure mode and effects analysis, the DMAIC process, fault tree analysis. But for the sake of time in this webinar, we're just going to demonstrate the 5 whys and the fishbone diagram. But SafetyChain can support all of those common tools, and we can show you in this webinar how we can make it easier to perform your root cause analysis more thoroughly, efficiently, and faster.
Yeah, and that's actually, why don't we start out? I'm going to send a poll out to everyone. So we've got, I'll say more than 5 people on the phone. We got plenty of people on the phone. I want to ask, and it's fun too, I'm going to launch a poll. So I'm going to ask everyone that's in the audience to pay attention on their screen really quick, and we're going to launch this. Well, I just want to ask you, what best describes how your facility performs this root cause analysis now? We'll actually share the results with everyone in a couple of seconds. So as we see some items come through, some people, are we not performing RCA? Is it manual? Are you looking at solutions? Maybe you use something right now. Maybe there's a system that you have. Or my favorite is, when you're in maybe a relationship and you don't know how to describe it to your parents or something, like or your friends, it's complicated, right? So we're going to leave this up just for a second. I see a lot of people voted, so we passed 50% voting. One last second, about 5-10 more seconds. Oh, we got plenty of people still voting. This is great. So and so it'll be interesting to share this when I close the poll, Shamini. We still have a couple of people.
I'm interested.
A couple of seconds left. I know. All right, I'm going to close it. Let's move on. I know a couple people are clicking now, and boom. All right. So this is what everyone said. We don't perform RCA. So very little, right? So people are doing RCA. We like to see that, okay? But interestingly enough, a lot of manual processes out there. This doesn't surprise me. Looks like some people are looking at solutions. We got a good, 16% using software. And thank you for all of the people that just said it's complicated. We appreciate that. So, all right. So, moving on. Why don't we take us through, Shamini, what you've done? Like, what was your process when you kind of did this? Oh, this is horrible. No, wait. Tell us more.
No, I'm sure this is probably familiar to a bunch of people who actually perform root cause analysis. You get together in a group in a room, and you hunker down with your Post-it notes and your Sharpie marker, and someone facilitates the RCA. And usually in this type of process, you try to organize your information, but then once everything is done and organized up on the board, someone has to take a picture of that RCA, because then it has to be put onto another form that needs to be filled out completely, and no one really wants to put that information that you got from the Post-it notes into another form. And then you have to sign out your corrective action, so then that's another email that needs to be sent out, and then you may have to put the results from that picture that you've taken into an Excel or a Visio to attach that to the form that also needs to be put out. And once that form is complete, you never really look at it again because it's on a form. And you have other paperwork that you have to look at on a daily basis. And typically, you can use up to 3 different systems or even more to kind of capture all of this information. So first thing, you have your whiteboard that you were utilizing to organize all of your Post-it notes, and then you put things into your Excel to kind of map the Post-it notes again, and then you might have your corrective action register, which is also an Excel document, and then you email who's responsible for what, and then you might have to also put the RCA into an incident management system, and then someone has to follow up with everyone about their corrective actions. So the cool thing about SafetyChain is that we can manage all of that for you from start to finish.
Yeah, that sounds pretty complicated, and ultimately, you know, that limits what you can do with that, what you learn, because it's always you're just looking at maybe the most recent incident or the most recent root cause analysis that was done, and you know, making it a more systems-based approach really does unlock some keys. So why don't we walk through maybe an example, right, Shamanique, of these methods, and get into the fishbone and the 5 whys.
Yeah, but before we do that, let's look at some common mistakes that people make when they're doing their food safety root cause analysis. When you're identifying symptoms as a root cause, that means you're not looking at the systems or processes involved as closely as you should have been. And if you're viewing the root cause as singular, usually if you have a persistent problem, they have more than one cause. And assigning fault to people rather than a system. I don't know how many times we came up with the corrective action that you're going to retrain. You're always retraining. That's the kind of go-to explanation for why something happened. You're going to retrain your operators. But a root cause can never be an individual. If an individual is involved, you need to evaluate why they're exhibiting the actions. Like I said before, you want to make the processes and the systems infallible, so that no matter who is in that role, the system will prevent the errors from occurring. And identifying a root cause you can't control. And typically when you do this, the corrective action is you're going to conduct extra checks. And I know there's tons of people who have implemented additional checks as a corrective action, but those extra checks are only gathering additional information. They don't actually control your problem. And the last one is selecting the wrong tool or approach to perform an RCA. So complex problems require tools that allow for thorough brainstorming sessions, while more simple problems can utilize tools such as a 5 why. So when you get started with your root cause analysis, whichever tool you select, it is necessary for you to start here, defining your problem statement. And it needs to be agreed upon by the group of selected individuals that have come together to do this root cause analysis. And you should have a cross-functional team of people. And you want to make sure that whoever is leading your root cause analysis, that they actually have the training to lead it properly. A lot of times people don't do root cause analysis because they don't have an expert in it. They don't have someone who feels comfortable leading it. But investing in that person or persons that can do this process for you will pay dividends in the future. So once this information is identified and documented, you can begin the process of performing your root cause analysis. So the simplest tool that we're going to discuss would be the 5 why analysis. It's basically just a questioning process. It's designed to drill down into the details of a problem or solution and peel away the layers of symptoms. And this is where I think a lot of people get tripped up, is they identify these symptoms as a root cause instead of the actual root cause. And the investigator and the team keeps asking the question why until a root cause or root causes are identified. you can have more than one root cause. That's important to keep in mind. And also with this process, identification of that root cause could take more than 5 whys. It could take less. You shouldn't be so much tied to the number, but making sure that you really get to the root and not just stop at the symptoms. Sometimes you may be able to identify the root cause a little more easily than you initially expected. So here within SafetyChain is an example of a 5 why form you can use and build out. This is something that can be changed or customized for your facility based on your process here. And then this is an example of a record that would be generated based on the information that's filled out. And in this case, in this example, I did use 5 whys to get there. And then when it comes down to the solutions here, you can identify which departments need to own the corrective actions, and our task scheduler can assign the corrective actions to the department that needs to perform them, and that will automatically send out the notification. It would also send out reminders, and you'll be able to see the status of those corrective actions in real time. And also this record here, it will be able to be used as soon as it's submitted. Everyone who needs to know about this incident will have access to the details of this incident. So you don't have to send out a separate email. You don't have to send it out to corporate or anything like that. Everyone, if you work in a larger organization, your C-suite can have access to it, as well as the people that are in your facility. And then this data that's put into your record can also be used to report trends, and you can analyze that data over time.
Got it. Yeah, and if you stay here really quick, I have a couple of questions are coming in. These are great questions, guys. Keep them coming. On this, so if you imagine yourself like in the room before a technological solution or a software solution, right? You're in the room and you're normally going to go through sticky pads and the whiteboard and do that process. Who are you pulling together the same team to come up with this? And instead of looking at a whiteboard, maybe you're just looking at these questions right on your computer or a tablet, correct?
Absolutely. So you can still use the whiteboard approach and have someone record those notes in real time. I'm not saying that the whiteboard approach does not have value. It absolutely does. And the cool thing about this process as well is that you can attach any supporting documentation for any of these whys to reference as well. So everything from your investigation will be in this record and can easily be referenced from this record. So you don't have to search in different spreadsheets or things like that to attach to an email to send out. As long as you've attached it to this record, everyone will have easy access to it. And if you did want to use the whiteboard approach, you could also take that picture and attach it to this record as well for reference.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. So the important part is, though, you are bringing together the team. You want to solve this as a team. It's not just one person looking at a software program, and figuring it out. You still need everyone's buy-in, right?
Absolutely. So RCAs are typically, you need to have a risk-based definition for when that triggers an RCA. And usually for people, it's the severity of an incident, maybe it's a dollar amount, something like that. Not every single incident will need to go through a thorough root cause analysis, but that should be something that is decided within your facility or within your organization, and a risk assessment should dictate what incidents actually go through this thorough process.
Yeah, you don't want to overdo it. Well, that's funny. I know, keep the questions coming in. I want to tackle one more while we're here. Somebody asked, so does the CEO see this? And I just take that. It's like, no, there's control. You get to set up who gets to see what. I think that's a really important distinction to make, right? We don't want to. We don't need to cause unnecessary alarm, right?
Right. No. So you can absolutely set up who has access to view these records. I'm just saying that it could be easier to set up dashboards for different access for people who need different access. Maybe they don't have access to everything within the record, but they can see high level what your tasks or your assigned corrective actions are. But it's definitely customizable for you and your organization, which I think is important. So it's not kind of like don't think of it as Big Brother that everyone can see at all times, but whoever needs to see, both internally and externally, you'll be able to readily pull this together and just send off this record. Or if you were sending it to an external party, but within your organization, it'll be readily accessible to those that need it.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to stop derailing us. We've got lots of great questions to get to at the end. So please continue, Dominique. This is fantastic.
So based on what we just saw, tying the 5 Why example that we saw to the FDA New Era Smarter Food Safety Blueprint, you can easily and quickly start this root cause analysis process utilizing the already dedicated forms. All of your RCAs are going to have that standardized formatting for your reporting, which is going to be helpful when it comes to trending and actually making use of the data that you're collecting in all of these root cause analysis. And then, like I said, enhanced communication tools. This information can be disseminated quickly, both internally and externally, which I think is usually a missing link for a lot of people. So the next tool that we can talk about would be the fishbone analysis. So I typically think of the fishbone analysis is used for more complex issues. It's used for brainstorming issues and causes of particular problems, and is often used in conjunction with the 5 Why. So this is for if you have a problem or an issue where you're not quite sure what the exact problem statement is to really drill down into that root cause. For example, you could have a product that you have a salmonella positive on and you have a recall, but you don't really know where that's coming from. You don't know if it's an ingredient, you don't know if it's due to your equipment, you don't know if it's due to your personnel, all of those things. So this type of analysis will allow for you to look at all of the possible things that could have resulted in that problem, and then getting those targeted statements and putting that into your 5 Why to really drill down into that root cause analysis to get to your root cause, sorry. And the interesting thing about this is that once you filled all of these things out, typically people in the group will vote on what they believe are the top 3, and those are the 3 issues that you will dive into deeper in order to really try to find that root cause. And this approach is really, I think, helpful because the various causes are grouped into categories, and they're these are the generic categories: measurements, methods, materials, machines, environment, and personnel. Having these categories allows for brainstorming of all possibilities, like I said. And so then once you identify those, then you can eliminate or mitigate the factors that are causing the issues. So within SafetyChain, we can also support this is how it would look. And this is, you can set things up to have your problem statement and then each of the different categories. Also within each of these measurements, or within each of these categories, sorry, you can also attach supporting documentation. You can give method issue reasons or manpower issue reasons. These will help with that trending later on, like I was saying before, which I think is something that is missing in most people's use of root cause analysis tools today. So this is an example of a completed fishbone analysis. So walking through this, the description of a problem: a processed food is recontaminated after pasteurization and enters the market. In this case, you can say that no measurement issues are identified, but in some instances you will have them. Then going down to methods, potentially we could have post-processing procedures to prevent recontamination were not followed, and that issue reason is going to be your SOP for processing was not followed. Then you look at your people. Employees were not monitoring equipment throughout the entire process. Employees were not wearing proper PPE, so you can give those issue reasons again there. And then looking at equipment, post-pasteurization equipment not functioning properly, valves controlling flow of product. And then you get down to your environment: equipment not cleaned properly, potential cross-contamination issues. And once this one is simple, just for the sake of this webinar, but you could potentially have multiple sources that you identify. And once you've identified and vote on the top 3, you can put those into the 5 Why that I showed you before, and those records will be connected. So you can reference the RCA for your fishbone analysis in that 5Y. So that's that traceable element that the FDA is talking about, that everything is connected, and all attaching documentation from both of these can really help you get down to have a complete investigation, and you will also be able to really see the root cause, and you'll be able to trend all of the data that you're inputting in here for future reference, which will help with the prevention portion of the FDA's requirements.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're saying you can actually, for complex issues, this is definitely the method to maybe start with if you just don't know where to go. And then when you vote and you get you say, hey, use top 3, right? If you find the top 3, then you can actually take those and go to the 5Y method. Is that right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people choose the wrong tool, like I said, for some of the more complex issues, and a 5Y is typically not the right tool for you to use for a complex issue. But it also is the easiest, which I can see why people tend to gravitate towards that. But the whole point of root cause analysis is to really take that deep dive. It's going to take time, it's going to take resources, and it's going to take expertise. So you're going to have to put in to be willing to do those things in order to really get to the root cause and prevent those reoccurrences. That's why if you choose the wrong tool, you'll typically have the recurring issue, and you'll never truly get to that root cause because you're not taking that proper deep dive and examining all of the possible issues that are going into you having your big incident.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great.
So just summing up things here, you'll be able to trend your data, which will lead to predicting and preventing issues. And you'll also, once you're able to pinpoint those root causes, you'll be able to train your personnel on your new, more robust and infallible systems. So this here is an example of visibility to trends in data, of what it can look like in our link platform. You can trend across different times for the last month, 3 months, up to a year, 2 years, depending on how many root cause analysis you've done. You can filter by your fishbone, you can filter by your 5Y, you could even build out custom reporting dashboard for both to show up. You can see the measurement issues you've had for any of the different records that you've submitted. So that's what this is showing here. And overall, like I said, you can share this with anyone and you'll have better visibility to your problem areas. I don't think we have that today, just because the data is not easily accessible. Most people are still on paper. And once that paper is filled out in a facility, it's done. It's old news because you have to worry about the new stuff that's coming in. So you're collecting data, but not actually analyzing it. And that's not going to help you if you're trying to prevent issues from recurring or even happening.
Yeah. Talk to me about, Shamini, is there typically you want some sort of supervision or managerial exposure to this? Talk to me about, is there a sign-off process, generally speaking, even if you're using paper and pencil and the whiteboards and the sticky notes, right? How does somebody know, okay, yes, this has been done, and is it a sign-off process of some kind?
Absolutely. So typically, whoever is a part of your root cause analysis, they will all sign a paper saying that they were there and that they participated. Within SafetyChain, those people can still perform those sign-offs and verifications within SafetyChain. And also for the corrective actions that are assigned, you can verify those as well and reference those in your root cause analysis form. So all of those things can all be connected and easily done in real time.
Oh, great. That makes sense.
So wrapping this up, the importance of your root cause analysis. It's important for understanding what went wrong, but it's also important to understand what went right. You need to understand your process completely in order to really be effective in making any changes or trying to prevent things from happening. It encourages employee engagement. Make sure that when you have your root cause analysis, you're including some of your operators on the floor. And when you do include different people from different levels, make sure that everyone feels empowered to speak up. You don't want people to feel like they're being blamed or they can't talk and speak out, but you really are just trying to figure out what happened. Make sure that it's a safe place for people to actually speak up and speak out, because that's ultimately going to get them committed to the process and strengthen your food safety commitment and culture. And then doing your root cause analysis, it helps you to look at your own processes, and be critical of them. And it can also support continuous improvement and quality assurance, which all help your bottom line. So I think that's
Yeah,
it for me.
that's great. Yeah, so I think one of the things that you had said earlier, Shamanique, I just wanted to hit on again, because I think we've all been in that situation, whether you're in a food manufacturing facility or CCG or something like this, where you said it's got to be, you got to make it about the process, not the people, right? When you make the corrections and you're going through root cause analysis to find what's going on, and if you are, if you in your facilities you're finding fault with the people, take stock, right?
Yep.
It can be, like you said, you can be in the retrain mode, but if you're really finding the root of that, I think you'll find much better, easier running operations, so that you aren't tackling these as often. So I think one of those things is just generally speaking, hey, don't make it about the people, make it about the paper, right? Even though we're not talking about people, we're talking about software, but it's much easier. And ultimately, that's where we should be looking at, right? Let's look at those processes. So, wow, we've got a ton of questions, Shamanique. We have a ton. So I'm just going to kind of go from the top. I appreciate everyone. We've got plenty of time to go through these. So some of them is interesting. One from Jennifer, I like this one. She writes, what happens when you don't have a technological control, but human, and if process is followed, the issue doesn't occur, but the human element is playing into the failure. So it's kind of going to what we were just talking about, Shamini. What advice would you give to Jennifer on, hey, when they're still finding there's this human element at play, how do you maybe address that?
Absolutely. So the human element is it's going to be a factor in it, but it can't be the only factor in what is happening. Like, you can't just always blame your personnel for the things that are happening. Look at ways to improve those processes, in order to prevent identifying that person as your root cause. And typically, training of your personnel, that should be considered a preventive action based on the improvements that you've identified from your root cause to your processes.
Yeah, that's good point. Good point. I'm going to back up on the slides a little bit, Shamini, because the next question actually had to do with, let me see if I can take over your screen. There we go. It'll take just a couple of seconds, guys. Give me a second. The question was on a specific slide, how to start root cause analysis. I think when we were talking about this, you'd said, regarding the how to start slide, he was asking, do you mean corrections when you mean immediate corrective actions? So if you look at, let me see here, how to start, almost there. Really,
I think I know what they're talking about. Yes, absolutely. Any immediate corrections or corrective action that were completed. So if you had a roof leak, and the immediate corrective action or correction in this case is to, section off the area and prevent people from going through, and then immediately patching up the roof, like that's great. But then you need to figure out like what's going on aside from that. So yes, absolutely, the correction.
Okay, got it. Great. This next one's interesting, Shamanique. I like this one because it really actually calls on another part of the FDA's 4 core elements for the new era, which is culture. So Phil asks, regarding, I'm running into a problem where culturally some managers have tried to force the work of all root cause and corrective action to be conducted by entry-level QA techs. Okay.
Mm.
He says it's been a struggle. Have you seen this behavior before, and how did it get resolved?
I have not heard of that happening before. So this is very interesting. But if you're going to have them perform those root cause analysis, you need to make sure that they have been trained properly to actually know how to perform them so that they're effective. You don't want people just spinning their wheels and kind of coming up with things that they feel is correct. Really understanding how to perform your root cause analysis is and having that expertise is going to be critical to it actually being effective. I would say that if they are responsible for that, then they absolutely need to be given the resources to be the subject matter expert in the things that they're doing. But that is a very interesting thing. I don't think I've ever experienced that before.
Yeah,
Is it for, I
it's
want to
interesting.
ask them another question, like, is it for all incidents? Like, does it have to be just internal things, or like what's the
Yeah, right.
threshold? If they had a recall, he would have all of the entry level people perform.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have
That's a
additional
good
questions.
counterpoint. That's funny. Well, so another interesting element to all of this is if you're doing paper and pens, okay, let's just call it the whiteboard and the Sharpie and the post-it notes. It's hard to teach that. However, when you move to a system, right, the
Yep,
system sort of it's kind of
it guides you.
bulletproof, right? You just follow. You go step 1, 2, 3, 4. We've heard from tons of our customers that are like, one of the ancillary benefits of using software is the training time, whether that's even doing, pre-op or, supplier audits, all of that, it becomes much, much simpler to pull in new people, right? Because
Absolutely.
the instructions are built in. So that's a great question. So,
Agreed.
all
And
right.
so on
So
those
I love,
forms, go ahead.
yep.
No, I
No,
was
no,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say on the forms that are built out, you can always provide additional notes for how to perform those different steps. So you can add, I think, go to slide like 16. um,
15, 16, which one?
16 is fine. So where it
Perfect.
says, why did this problem occur? You can give them hints and prompts to get them thinking in
Mm,
the right ways to help facilitate this process. So that is going to be more useful because people will know, hey, I need to get to here. I need to do this at this point. And like they're saying, the training, you'll be able to have people be more confident as they go through these things. And the more confident they are and the more comfortable they feel with the process, the better the results of your root cause analysis will be.
yeah, yeah, totally true. I get that. That's an interesting one. The next question is, I think it's kind of fun the way he posted this. So Gary asked, why would you perform RCA away from, quote, the scene of the crime? The scene of the crime. So I think he was referring to when that question came in, I was talking about, okay, so are you still pulling people together? And this quick pull just won't quite go away. So my apologies. Um, what the question is, where do you really want to perform this RCA? Is it better to do it on the floor where you see the, where you see the problem, Dominique?
I think that that's part of the process. So you want to come together and bring those experts in your process that are familiar with the equipment and everything like that. And part of doing your root cause analysis is maybe you do go walk the floor and you examine the scene of the crime, as they put, and really look and observe maybe the process. Examine how the people are working and doing the tasks that are associated with your problem statement. That's going to be important. Like I said, there's no one thing that needs to happen when you do root cause analysis. It's a collection of things that has to come together, which is why it's such an in-depth analysis that takes time and energy and information. You will always want to have as much information as possible to really be able to say that your corrective actions are based on evidence, not because you feel like this might be right. No, you need to know this is what happens. This is our normal process. This is what I've observed. This is where we think based on our observations and our data that we can make improvements, not just like, oh, well, I think it's here. So I absolutely agree that you should observe the scene of the crime and go visit it and take that with you. It should definitely be considered as you're performing your root cause analysis.
Yeah, good point. The scene of the crime. Yeah, I just imagine, you see like the criminal tape, the crime scene tape, right next to like a big machine, and there's a little white outline of somebody's body on the ground. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is where the root cause is, right here. Good. So a couple more questions. We've got plenty of time for these. So Rick is asking, Sean was saying, will you explain again on when we should use the 5 whys method versus the fishbone method?
So typically I think of the 5 whys method as when you have that targeted statement, that problem statement. So a lot of times it will be like, I think in my example, I used an operator slipped on the floor. You know exactly what happened, but now you're trying to figure out why. You can put that direct statement into the 5 why. When you have a more complex statement where you are trying to figure out how the different factors involved in your process could have potentially generated this incident, is where you would use a tool, more of a cause and effect tool. So think simple targeted problem statement can go through that 5 whys, because you'll be able to actually get to a root cause and not just find several symptoms that you think. If you put your problem statement into your 5 whys and you're able to, and you identify you're viewing your symptoms as the root cause, then you haven't used the right tool. Put it that way.
Yeah, got it. Good. And this one's sort of along the same lines there. So how do you go about when there are several answers to one method question? What would that look like? I'm going to try and sort of go back to that screen too, if I can, while you kind of tackle that. If there's several answers to that why, what would you consult someone?
For this one? So this one
Yep.
actually had several answers as to what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And we can support it in this way. We can support it in each individual solution can have its own field. And then based on those fields, you can send out those tasks. It just depends. And then if you look at the fishbone analysis too, all of these things
There we
where
go.
you see potential sources of measurement issues, you could have
Mm-hmm.
it the way that I've designed it out now, or you could have them as single fields, and you can have more than two reasons here. This is just simply what I built out. This, which is the
Mm-hmm.
really cool part about SafetyChain, is that you can make your forms for what you need them to be to support your processes. And it is definitely easy to change and make them more effective for you in your processes. So don't think that the way that I've designed it is the way that it has to
Mm-hmm.
be. For simplicity's sake, I just designed
Yeah.
it this way.
That's perfect. I appreciate you kind of going through that. Yeah, this is just an example, and we didn't really want to necessarily focus too much on the software. Of course, we're biased. We love software. It's what we do. But really, it's still the same thing where you don't want to limit yourself, right? You want to give yourself the ability to really list multiple reasons. So
Absolutely.
good,
And for each of
good.
those reasons, you could attach supporting documentation for each of the reasons that you've identified.
Yeah, because each is going to kind of have a little life of its own, right? When you really get into it, there could be, and then that gets very hairy. So
Yep.
we got a good statement from William here. No question, just saying trending analysis all in one system seems to be the best way to determine, or, and this is the nice, I like this, or predict future issues, right? When you start to see trends, now you're going to be able to say, well, wait, we can predict where this next thing is. And that gives you more, I think, in my, that you need to go to management, say, maybe we need to invest in something different as far as equipment or processes, or maybe we really need to do something different than always be fixing the same problem that we keep hitting into. So really appreciate that insight. Yeah. Another question, Michael here asked, excuse me, what guidance do you have around root cause analysis across multiple sites that might have different environments, right? Culture, space, like just the buildings themselves, right? But it's the same problem. He continues by saying it's natural to want a quote unquote one band-aid fix all to ensure we're operating similar across sites, but is it better to analyze it site by site?
Absolutely. So I think the cool thing about having the standardized reporting and form is that you will all be essentially performing the same process, but it will be specific to your site, if that makes sense. You absolutely need to make sure that you are, I don't think that you need to worry so much about not having the unique insight into each individual facility, because the people in each facility are going to apply the root cause analysis to their own process. They're experts in their process, and that's how they're going to approach utilizing the tool for their process. It'll just be the reporting part of it that you'll be able to compare across facilities if you do decide to use a standardized form across an organization.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of what you just said there. You want to do the investigations, you want to perform the root cause analysis site by site, but
Absolutely.
Giving one tool to all of the sites to standardize the process and their approach when they go into those things, that's really what helps it. I mean, he's talking about the one Band-Aid fix it all. It can be a Band-Aid across all sites, but you have to perform these by site. So,
yes, absolutely.
Yep. We've got a couple other questions. I've been sort of avoiding getting into some of the product questions. Again, we don't want to just make this a pitch for SafetyChain, guys. We really want to get your questions. So we're going to be wrapping up. A couple more coming at you. But this one I thought was kind of interesting. It goes along with what Michael was talking about, which is, are you able to share RCA results within multiple facilities in the same company? How about multiple companies? So think about that sort of, we're not just looking at one facility. Some of us are, okay, but if you've got multiple facilities, how would you approach that sharing of information?
Absolutely. So you are able to share information across multiple facilities, as long as you, during the setup of SafetyChain, you allow, you set up the permissions and the accesses to do so. So on this form here, you can see where it says location. If everyone in your organization is utilizing the same form across the location, then they can select their own location and still use the same standardized reporting. And then based on the submission of the data, you can build out reports in our link platform, which I think was that last slide I showed. And that reporting capability that's where you set those permissions for who can see it, whether it be someone in corporate, whether it be someone within your facility, or if you're sharing information across facilities. And the cool thing about that is, if you are in a larger organization, and I know a lot of people have those quality meetings on a monthly basis where you get spreadsheets put together, and you have to input all of this different data, you wouldn't even have to do that, because your C-suite will already have access to see those trends and that data that they would want to see based on your submission of data in SafetyChain, which I think is actually a huge time saver.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, that brings up a good point too, Shamanique, which is, hey, if you got different sites, right, and they're all operating the same sort of RCA standard process, maybe it's with the software, maybe it's just whatever, you're able to see this visibility. First of all, it's flexible, right? Just because you make this record and because you go through this process doesn't mean everybody in the organization sees it. However, it is infinitely digestible. What I mean by that is anyone at any time, should they need to, can come in here and look at that. Now think about having that site-to-site meeting you're talking about monthly, right, Shamanique? Mm-hmm. Think about the site leaders, the plant managers saying, wait a second, why don't we get together once, maybe a quarter, and look at the overall thing. Let's share, and this is the point I want to make, let's share our results. What's happening over there? Are you guys running into the same issue we are? well, it's all standardized. It's all in one place. There's no filing cabinet that you have to run to figure this out. It's right on your computer, or even honestly your smartphone if you really want it to be.
Yeah.
So that sharing of information is really what leads to a better, I think, more robust continual improvement environment.
In the sharing of standardized information, everyone's utilizing the same reporting format. So you're really able to have clear visibility to data and not like apples and oranges. Everyone is sharing apples, comparing apples at this point.
Yep. Yep. Good. Here's a great question. I think this is interesting. So the question is, are RCA forms tied to a non-conformance type so that you can inspect prior analysis and preventative actions taken, and furthermore, perhaps eliminate retention of non-effective preventative actions?
Absolutely. So I think that is one of the coolest things about this is that um, when you trend these things and reference your corrective actions, you'll actually be able to figure out if they were effective over time. So you'll be able to, can you repeat the first part of the question for me again?
Yeah, I'm going to give the medal of the most intricately worded question to Rick. Are RCA forms tied to a non-conformance type?
Yes. So you can set up what kind of nonconformance type that you would want. In the form, you can build it out to select under description of the problem. You could potentially set up where you can also have a drop-down menu and select that this came from a customer complaint, this came from a recall, this came from an internal audit, this came from an external audit. Under description of the problem, you can add a field in there to help further connect it to an incident or a corrective action. Put it that way, if that makes sense. We can add that in here.
Yeah. So that could be kind of maybe a drop-down field, right? So you could actually say, hey, this is a non-conformance type, and therefore I like this idea, by the way, Rick, because ultimately what you're thinking about is another level of visibility in data. You want to be able to see what kind of conformance types are trending more, right? So I think that's brilliant. I love it.
You can definitely do that. And you can also do that for you and tie that corrective action to the task that you schedule.
Yep. Good. All right. So here's one that I've been avoiding, but Miriam asked a really good question. So groupthink. So this is a hard one. So let's just kind of give opinions about this, right, Shamini?
Mm-hmm.
So groupthink is a problem in brainstorming sessions. I'm going to second that. I believe that very strongly. Brainstorming has its limitations. Groupthink is one of them. So she continues, something as simple as voting on the top issues can be easily influenced by this. How does your system build objectivity into this by possibly having a likelihood scoring system? She's really looking to facilitate the top potential root causes to float to the top. Like, does the software help to objectify the voting process for your top three when you're going to go after it?
So
the tough one. I was avoiding this one, Shamini.
This is a tough one, and I feel like I'm gonna have to get Eric involved in answering it completely. But I know that we have the capability of having risk assessments within SafetyChain. And this is also I really like this question, Miriam. It would be interesting to see if we could also apply that risk assessment capability we have to your fishbone analysis here for the reasons that you've identified. So I think there's potential there for us to actually support that. Don't quote me, I don't know for sure. But I think that we do have capabilities that could potentially help with that, honestly. I really like that idea. I like
the challenge. I love the challenge. I'd further that just by one level. It's at the very least, without putting in extra, adapting the forms to sort of create that objectivity. I think what you'll find is that because all of the data is infinitely available, you're able to assess, was that, through time, what are we looking at objectively the top three, right?
Yes.
I think you can make the argument that says that visibility to this data and these processes is going to give better objectivity. I think that in general, though, software is not I can't think of any software system, and I've been through a lot of them, that actually does aid a person's capability to think and interact with each other, right? So, but I like the challenge. It's awesome. That was the last question. I saved that one for last. So,
I like it.
We are at the top of the hour. I really appreciate everyone taking the time today. And Chamonix, this has been fun. We'll be doing this again. There's a lot more information, resources on SafetyChain.com for anybody that wants to go out and check us out. Again, we'll wrap it up now. But Chamonix, thank you again, and let's do this again soon.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, this concludes the webinar, folks. Have a great day. Cheers.